All right, welcome to another tutorial. This one is from the Whimsical Florals Stick and Stitch pack, which is available in my Etsy shop. I love this one. It's got a nice straight line to work off. So this is really great to add to like the bottom of a tea towel, the bottom of jeans you could put it on you could flip it around and do it underneath a zipper or like on a canvas bag. This one is really versatile and super fun. So I'm going to add it today to the bottom front of these shorts that I have, and we're going to see how it turns out. So for materials, you need to pick whatever you're going to stitch on, and then I will share with you the colors that I'm using, which is going to be 3045, ecru, 632, 3778, 301, 948, and 934. I'm working on my shorts, and then I have a 5-inch hoop, which is going to be big enough to fit all the way across with a little bit of extra room for this design. And then since I'm working with shorts, I have a needle. I have a size 5 DMC needle, and then I also have a little bit of a bigger one. This is like a size 22 or 24 chenille or tapestry DMC needle. This is for when I'm working with 6 strands. So we're going to get started. All right, so I'm going to start by separating my hoop, and this would apply with whatever you're working with. And I'm going to put it on the inside here of my shorts. I want the design to be about right here, so I'm going to try to get the hoop a little bit, leave it out a little bit so that I have the middle part of the hoop centered around the bottom of the shorts. And then I'm just going to untighten the screw until I can get it around the shorts here. I'm actually going to move this down a little bit more. Okay. So when you're working with clothes, you don't always have to have all of the fabric in the hoop. It will be a little bit more difficult because you can't get it quite as tight, but it still helps for me to hoop things just to get it as tight as I can, rather than working just loose stitching. So I'm going to see if I can tighten up these shorts as much as possible without pulling the hoop off here. All right, so let's take a look in perspective. Here's the bottom of the shorts. So this would kind of be the bottom line towards the right here. And then I'm going to see if I can stick my design on. So I will peel away the design, and I'm going to put it right about here and stick it down. Now I'm ready to stitch. Okay, let's get started. I think I said I was going to use this color 3778, but I think I'm going to do without it. So we're going to start without it. I'm going to see if I can cut off a little bit of this extra fray here just so you guys can see a little bit better, and so it doesn't get in my way. I'm not worried about it. I'm sure these will fray again. All right, so let me cut away a few of these extra strings and then we'll get started. I'm going to start with these 2 more dainty flowers right here in the middle. These are going to be done the same way. So I'm using an ultra dark green to stitch these in, and I'm going to go ahead and use 3 strands. So I don't have mine on a bobbin. I'm just going to pull from the bottom here. I like to get a length that's about 12 or 13 inches long and then cut it off. And I'm going to use 3 strands. So I'm going to split my strands here until I get 3 and 3. And I'll go ahead and thread this through my needle now. I'm using my size 5 smaller eyed needle because it's just 3 strands, and this just allows for a little more precision. Tied a knot at the other end, and I'm going to cut off any excess. Now I'm going to get started. I'm going to do a simple back stitch for the stems here. So I'm just going to come up through the fabric and I'm going to go down about a stitch length away. I'm going to keep my stitch lengths nice and tiny because this is a small space that I'm working with. And then I will come back up through the fabric a stitch length away from there then I will go back down through the same hole I had just stitched down through right here. And I'll repeat that all the way up the length of the stem. See if I can fit 2 more stitch lengths here. Okay, perfect. Now for each of the little leaf buds coming off, I'm gonna do what I just call like a repeated straight stitch. So I'm still using the same 3 strands of the 934. I'm gonna make a straight stitch and I'm gonna repeat that. So I'm gonna come back up at the end of that stitch and go back down just over it. And this just makes it a little bit thicker. And I'll do that on the other side as well. So I'll make a straight stitch. And I'll repeat another straight stitch right on top of that one that I just made. Just helps thicken it out a little bit and give that little shape that we're looking for. Come down here and do this one. And I'll do this one. You can see this flower is really starting to come together. So I'm going to go ahead and tie off a knot in the back. So I'm going to run my needle underneath a nearby stitch. And I'm going to leave a little loop out like this, and then I'm going to run my needle under that loop and pull tight. I like to do that usually 2 to 3 times when I'm working on clothing, just so I get it nice and secure. And then I can cut this. And then I'm going to repeat that same thing on this stem over here. You could in fact just pull across instead of tying off a knot there. When I'm working with clothes, I don't do a backing on mine, so I like to make sure I tie it off really nice so there's no long strands coming across the back. So I'm going to repeat that exact same process for this stem and these leaves. All right, finished up that other stem. What I'm going to do now is grab 4 strands of the ecru thread. So I'll split this down the middle. Sorry, not down the middle. I'll split this into 2 and 4. I just like to hold at the top and then pull down. And then when I get too far away, I just move my hand down until I separate them all. And I'm going to take the 4 strands and thread them through my needle. We're going to do some lazy daisies now for each of the little petals here. These are quite tiny, so bear with me here. You could always fill these in with just a few repeated straight stitches, kind of like we did for these little leaves. But for a lazy daisy, you're going to come up at the base of the petal shape, and you'll go back down through that same hole. You're going to leave a loop out like this over the petal that you're trying to stitch, and you're going to come up at the tip of that petal like so, and then I'm going to pull until I get the petal shape that I want. I'm going to stop right about there. I'm not going to pull too tight because I still want to have this nice rounded shape. If I pull too tight, it's going to become more straight. And then you can see our thread is on the inside of this loop right now. So I'm going to make my down stitch just on the other side of the loop to anchor this loop into place. And I'll repeat that for each petal. Gonna work my way around here. All right, I think I have 2 left. Need some like background music. Okay, not My Heart Will Go On. That's not the kind of background music that we need. Don't mind me. All right, we're gonna finish that up. I'm gonna go ahead and tie off a knot in the back, and then I will repeat for the other flower over here. All right, so I finished those up, and what's really gonna make them come together and look more floral-like, because they look a little wonky right now, is to put a dot in the center. So I'm gonna grab 3 strands of 30-45. You know what, let's make it 4. Make it 4 strands. And we're gonna do a 3-wrap French knot in the center of each of these flowers. So I'll start with this one. I'm gonna come up through the fabric. I like to hold my needle horizontally underneath the thread and wrap the thread around the needle 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to angle my needle down, and I'm going to make a down stitch right next to where I came up. And then I'm going to begin to push my needle down vertically through that knot. I'm holding the thread taut with my non-stitching hand. And then I'm going to pull through and release until I have my little knot right there. I'll go ahead and tie off here so that I don't pull a strand across the back. And I'll repeat it on the other side. I'm going to come up right about in the center, just a little bit to the side of the center. I'm going to hold my needle, wrap around 3 times, angle it down a little bit more vertically, and then I'm going to push it through the knot. I'm holding tight with my non-stitching hand here. And release. So now they look much more like cute little flowers. All right, we're gonna move on to this center flower next. For this center flower, I'm using all 6 strands of 948, which is a really light peachy pink color. And I'm using my needle that has a little bit of a larger eye here. So these are gonna be satin stitched in. So I'm gonna show you on this big petal first, just so you can really easily see. I like to start by doing a little tiny straight stitch in the middle. This is actually gonna get completely covered up. But what it does is it prevents our knot on the back, this knot right here, from being anywhere where I'm going to be taking my needle in and out a lot to fill this shape in. So now I like to do a few kind of guide stitches for direction. So I'm going to do one right in the middle here. I'm going to come up in the middle of the petal. I'm going to use my thread to guide me towards right down the middle vertically, sort of, and pull through. And then I'm gonna do one on the side over here. Towards the center. And I'm gonna do one on the other side over here. Towards the center. And now I'm going to fill in between all of my guidelines here. So I'm going to come up right next to this one, and above it, And I'm actually going to make this down stitch go in just a little bit before the center so that it doesn't get too crowded down there. And then my next one over, I'll make go all the way to the center line. I'm going to come over here. This one's going to not go quite all the way to the center. It's going to go right about to here. And then my next one over is going to go all the way. I'm going to do one next to that one that'll just go down a little bit. And then my next one can go all the way. And do one right here. So you're just going to continue to fill in the petal like this, making sure that every few stitches doesn't go all the way to the center, just so it doesn't get too tight and crowded down there. You can just put them in a little bit above, and then have the ones next to it go all the way down to the center. Oops. You can see I'm using almost my whole length of thread here on this one petal. So you'll want to tie off, or you'll need to tie off likely a few times to get each of these petals filled in. All right, so that petal is all filled in, so I'm going to repeat for all of the other petals, and then we'll continue on. Okay, so I finished up stitching in that flower. I've grabbed 3 strands of 632 next, which is like one of my favorite colors. It's like brown, but it's kind of got like a hint of red, rusty, orange brick in it. I don't know. It's just really beautiful, and it looks different with whatever colors you're using it around, so I think it'll look really nice here. So I'm just going to tie off my knot at the end, and I'm going to try to fit in a few French knots on the space on the inside of this flower, and I'm just going to do 2 wrap French knots. Just kind of cluster them together here. Whoops, got stuck on my hand, stuck on my ring. Oh no, we are really stuck. Give me a moment. Okay, somewhat managed to salvage that knot. It's not the best, but that's okay. So I'm going to fill in a few more here. Zoom this in for you so you can see a little bit better. I'm just sort of clustering these in as many as I can. Oops, got a little bit of my shorts frayed there. This makes things a little more difficult. Okay. Try to fit in one over here. Okay, I think I got enough in there to make it look nice and full, so I'll tie off and then we're going to complete our last 2 flowers. Okay, so these 2 flowers are going to be done the same way. They're just going to be repeated. So I have 4 strands of 301 right now, And I'm gonna go ahead and satin stitch these petals in as well. These are quite a bit thinner than our other petals, so they won't get quite so tight towards the center every time. So again, I usually like to start with kind of a straight stitch down the center of a petal. So I'm pulling my thread across so I can get a nice straight line up to the very tip of the petal. Make a down stitch. And then I'm gonna do a few on either side of that center one until I can make it, you know, become more of a rounded shape. So I'll come up right next to the center, but I'm gonna go down to the side and a little bit below that first stitch. I'm gonna come up basically in the same spot right here, just a little bit to the side in the center. And then I'm gonna come down below and to the side of my previous stitch. And then I'm gonna come up a little bit higher than the center right here. And I'm gonna go down below and to the side of this one, and this is gonna help me create that rounded edge that we're looking for. I think that looks pretty good on this side. I'm gonna do a couple on this side as well. So you're kind of like shortening the length of your stitches across as you go to the sides to achieve the rounded shape. So this one's gonna be shorter. I'm not gonna come up in the center, I'm gonna come up above the center. And then I'm gonna go down below right here to finish off this petal. So now I have a nice petal shape, and I'm gonna repeat that for all of these petals. I'll tie off a knot and then repeat that for all of these petals as well. All right, got all my petals done. The last thing we're gonna do is add a few French knots to the center of these flowers. I'm going to use 3 strands of ecru. Get those through my needle. And then tie my knot at the end. And I think I'm going to do 3 wrap French knots. I want these to be a little bit bigger. Zoom this in here a little bit for you. Okay. And I'm just going to cluster in as many of those as I can until I get any of this open space filled in. So obviously you can take these techniques that I used and switch up whatever colors you want. You can switch up the stitches if you like. You could do huge lazy daisies for each of these petals if you were working on like a hoop or something that was really structured. So feel free to personalize it however you want. That's what I love about stick and stitch. So I'm really just providing this tutorial for you to maybe give you some inspiration or something full on to try out. Give you some stitch tutorials that go specifically with these shapes and flowers. So however you want to do it. Almost got this all filled in. All right, so now that I have that done, I'm going to tie it off and then repeat over here, and then we'll talk about washing your stabilizer paper away. Okay, so I'm all finished stitching. I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the hoops so I can take them apart. And then to wash your stick and stitch paper away, you're just gonna take your project to a sink. Make sure you're running warm, pretty much almost hot water. Cold water really isn't gonna work as well. And you're gonna let the pressure of the faucet wash away all of this remaining stabilizer paper. Make sure you get it all washed away completely. You can also use a sprayer. That pressure is really good to get the stabilizer paper off. And then you're gonna let it dry completely, and then you're done with your project. This is what the back of mine looks like right now. This one's actually pretty nice and neat. I'm usually pretty messy on the backs of my embroidery. I don't do anything to the back of mine, shocker. I'm just usually too lazy, and when I finish a project, I'm like, I gotta do something else. So I wear my own embroidered things all the time. The threads are pretty soft. It never has bothered me before. And I make sure to tie it off really secure as I'm stitching. And you can run this through the wash and gentle cycle, and even through the dryer, or just to be safe, you can let it air dry. And it's always held up just fine. The stabilizer paper helps the threads get nice and stiff and hold up over time. There are iron-on backings that you can cut out and then iron on just for a little bit of extra security. But I, however, just don't usually feel the need to do that. So I hope you have enjoyed this project. Please like this video and subscribe if you want to see more content. I'm going to be adding a ton more stick and stitch tutorials, embroidery basic tutorials, all sorts of new information to my YouTube channel soon. So follow along if you are interested in that.